Welcome back, everyone, to a new story. We really hope you enjoy it. The afternoon was supposed to be simple. It was a Saturday, one of those rare, perfect ones where the sun slants through the blinds just right, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air like tiny, lazy fairies. My only plans involved my worn-out gaming chair, a headset, and the digital annihilation of my online rivals. For a 20-year-old guy named Evan, that was paradise. My character was just about to level up when a frantic knock rattled my bedroom door. It wasn't a polite tap. It was the kind of desperate drumming that signaled a crisis of sibling proportions. Evan, open up, it's an emergency. I sighed, pulling the headset down around my neck. What is it? Lily, I'm in the middle of a raid. The door creaked open anyway. My younger sister, Lily, stood in the doorway, her face a mask of creative despair. At 19, she was a whirlwind of artistic energy, a fashion design student at the local college whose bedroom often looked like a fabric store had exploded. Today, her blonde hair was piled into a messy bun held together by a pencil, and her eyes were wide with a familiar, high-stakes panic. Forget the raid, she said, her voice trembling slightly. My final project is due Monday. My entire grade depends on it, and my model just canceled. Stomach flu. I grunted sympathetically, turning back to my screen. That sucks. Find another model. I can't. It's Saturday afternoon. Everyone's busy or out of town. The dress is fitted for a specific body type, tall, slender, kind of like you. I froze, my hand hovering over the mouse. I slowly turned my head to look at her. A cold, dreadful premonition began to crawl up my spine. No, absolutely not. She stepped into my room, her hands clasped together in a pleading gesture. Evan, please, I am begging you. I have poured my soul into this project. It's my masterpiece. And it's a dress. Lily, a dress. I'm your brother. Your male brother. I gestured down at my own decidedly male-form broad shoulders. T-shirt, jeans. Does any part of this say runway model to you? That's the point. It's not about you being a model. It's about the dress needing a mannequin. A living, breathing mannequin. She was getting desperate now, her words tumbling out. You're the right height. Your shoulders are a little broad, but I can pin it. Just for a few photos, for my portfolio. No one will ever see them but my professor. I laughed, a harsh, incredulous sound. Are you insane me in a dress that's just wrong on so many levels? What if Mom or Dad came home? They're at their wine club until late tonight. It will take 5 minutes, 10 max, I swear on my entire fabric collection. I shook my head, resolute. No, Lily, I'm sorry about your project. I really am. But that's a line I'm not crossing. It's weird. She looked genuinely crushed. Her shoulders slumped, and her lower lip began to tremble. I knew this look. It was her nuclear option, the one that had successfully guilted me into doing her chores, covering for her when she broke curfew, and even once letting her practice her makeup skills on my hand. My whole future is riding on this. Evan, she whispered, her voice cracking. Professor Davies said this project could get me an internship at a real design house in New York. I felt a pang of guilt. I knew how much this meant to her. She lived and breathed fashion. Her dreams were woven into the silks and satins she spent all her money on. Still, a dress. She saw the flicker of hesitation in my eyes and pounced. She rushed to my side, her expression shifting from despair to intense, almost manic conviction. She grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. Brother, she said, her eyes boring into mine, I need you to wear this dress, right now. Trust me, it will change your life. The words hung in the air, ridiculously dramatic and over the top, like a line from a bad movie. I should have laughed. I should have told her to get out. But the sheer, raw desperation in her voice short-circuited my brain. It was just 5 minutes. Just to help my sister. How bad could it really be? It was just a piece of clothing, after all. Fine, I grumbled, my resolve crumbling like a sandcastle against the tide of her pleading. 5 minutes, and you owe me, big time. I'm talking a month of free pizza. Her face lit up with a blinding, triumphant smile. "Deal. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You won't regret this." She practically dragged me out of my chair and toward her room. I followed reluctantly, a knot of unease tightening in my stomach. Her room was, as usual, a chaotic masterpiece. Bolts of fabric leaned against the walls, sketches were pinned everywhere, and a headless mannequin stood in the corner, draped in a half-finished muslin prototype. And there, hanging pristine on a padded hanger from the back of her door, was the dress. It wasn't just a dress, it was a statement. It was made of a shimmering, silvery fabric that seemed to drink the light in the room and reflect it back with a soft, ethereal glow. It was sleeveless, with a delicate, high neckline and a skirt that looked like it would flow like liquid mercury. It was beautiful, I had to admit, in an abstract, artistic way, but it was also terrifyingly, undeniably feminine. "This is it," Lily breathed, her voice filled with reverence. "My cosmic dust gown." She took it off the hanger and held it up to me. The cool, slinky fabric brushed against my arm, and an involuntary shiver ran through me. "Okay, let's get this over with," I muttered, trying to sound as nonchalant as possible. "Where do I, do this?" "The bathroom," she said, pointing. "For privacy, just slip it on, and be careful with the zipper. It's delicate." I took the dress from her. The fabric felt impossibly light and cool in my hands, softer than anything I'd ever touched. It felt less like cloth and more like captured moonlight. Holding it felt strange, forbidden. I walked into the adjoining bathroom and closed the door, the click of the lock echoing in the sudden silence. I leaned against the door for a moment, my heart thumping a nervous rhythm against my ribs. This was stupid. This was so stupid. But it was for Lily. 5 minutes, then back to my game, back to being me. I took a deep breath, kicked off my sneakers, and pulled my t-shirt over my head. Then with a sense of profound and comical dread, I reached for the shimmering silver dress. The bathroom felt small and clinical, the bright vanity lights exposing my every hesitation. I stood there in my jeans and socks, holding the dress. It pooled in my hands, a cascade of silver that felt strangely alive. The fabric was as smooth as water and cool to the touch, sending a prickle of goosebumps across my skin. It seemed to hum with a quiet energy, a silent promise. Lily's words echoed in my head. "It will change your life." Yeah, right. It was going to make me the subject of blackmail for the rest of my life. With a heavy sigh, I unzipped my jeans and stepped out of them. Standing in my boxers, I felt ridiculously exposed. I held the dress up, trying to figure out how it even worked. It was a simple pullover design, no complicated straps or buttons, just a long, delicate zipper up the back. "You okay in there?" Lily's voice called from the other side of the door. "Just peachy," I mumbled back. "Give me a second." Taking one last, steadying breath, I gathered the silvery fabric and pulled the dress over my head. The moment it slid over my shoulders, everything changed. It wasn't a gradual shift. It was instantaneous, a wave of sensation that crashed over me, so potent and overwhelming that a gasp escaped my lips. It started as a strange, tingling warmth that spread from where the fabric first touched my skin. It felt like sinking into a hot bath, a deep cellular level relaxation and restructuring. My shoulders, usually broad and angular, seemed to contract. I felt a distinct, internal pull as they narrowed, the muscles and bones reshaping themselves under my skin with a sensation that was less painful and more like a deep, satisfying stretch. The dress, which should have been tight across my back, suddenly settled perfectly. The tingling energy cascaded downwards. My torso felt like it was being molded from clay, my waist cinched, pulling in with a dizzying rush, and I felt a gentle pressure push outwards from my hips, creating a curve that was profoundly, shockingly alien. My stomach flattened, the muscles tightening into a smooth, taut plane. I stumbled back against the counter, my hands flying up to my chest, and then I felt it, a new fullness, a weight that wasn't there a second ago. I watched in wide-eyed silent horror as my flat, masculine chest swelled, pushing against the fabric of the dress. The sensation was bizarre, a mixture of pressure and a strange, tender ache, like a muscle growing at an impossible speed. Too soft, perfect mounds formed, settling into the bodice of the dress as if it had been made for them. My breath hitched, my heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of disbelief. I looked down, where my hairy, muscular legs had been. There were now two slender, smooth limbs. The transformation flowed down to my feet, which felt smaller, my arches more delicate. The wave of change surged upwards, to my neck and face. My Adam's apple dissolved, smoothing out the line of my throat. I felt my jawline soften, my chin becoming more pointed, my cheekbones rising higher, my lips plumped, a tingling sensation making them feel full and soft. My skin, usually prone to a bit of stubble by the afternoon, became flawless and silky smooth. I ran a trembling hand over my cheek, and it felt like touching a stranger. But the most shocking change was my hair. I felt a sudden weight on my head and a tickling sensation against my back. My short, brown crew cut was gone. In its place, a cascade of silky, dark brown hair tumbled down my back, stopping just past my shoulder blades. It shimmered under the bathroom light, the same color as my old hair, but impossibly long and soft. The entire transformation took no more than 10 seconds, but it felt like a lifetime. The tingling faded, leaving a warm, humming sensation in its wake. I stood there, trembling, my mind refusing to process what my senses were screaming at me. Slowly, shakily, I lifted my head and forced myself to look in the mirror. The person staring back at me was not Evan. It was a girl, a woman. She was beautiful, stunningly so. She had my dark eyes, but they were larger, framed by long, thick lashes I didn't have before. Her face was a delicate, heart-shaped version of my own, with full lips and a small, straight nose. Her long, dark hair framed her face, and the silver dress clung to a figure that was all graceful curves and slender lines. She was tall, elegant, and looked utterly terrified. Because her eyes were my eyes, and that terrified face was mine. A scream built in my throat, but when I opened my mouth, the sound that came out was not my own. It wasn't the deep baritone I was used to. It was a high, clear, feminine cry of pure shock, a soprano shriek that was both mine and not mine at all. I was her. I was the girl in the mirror. The dress hadn't just been worn. It had remade me. Lily's words, the ones I had dismissed as teenage drama, came back to me with chilling, prophetic accuracy. It will change your life. She hadn't been kidding. The scream that tore from my new throat was thin and piercing. It didn't sound like me, but it was filled with all my terror. I stared at the stranger in the mirror, at her, at my wide, panicked eyes, my hands, now slender and delicate with long, pale fingers, flew to my face, touching the soft skin of my cheeks, the fullness of my lips. It was real. This wasn't a dream. "Lily," I shrieked, my voice cracking with hysteria. It sounded like a girl's voice, laced with a fear that was all my own. "Lily, get in here." The doorknob rattled, and the door flew open. Lily stood there, a triumphant, expectant smile on her face. "See, I told you it would look amazing." Her words died in her throat. Her smile vanished, replaced by an expression of utter slack-jawed shock. She stared at me, her eyes darting from my long hair to the curves of the dress, to the panicked face that was a feminized echo of her brother's. "Oh my God," she whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. "Evan, what did you do?" I yelled, my voice an octave higher than it had any right to be. I pointed a trembling finger at myself in the mirror. "What is this? What the hell did you do to me?" I stumbled forward, my legs feeling unsteady and foreign. The world seemed tilted, my center of gravity completely wrong. I felt top-heavy, the new weight on my chest throwing my balance off. I I don't know, Lily stammered, her face pale. It's just a dress. I bought the fabric from that weird little shop downtown. The one with all the crystals in the window. The owner was this strange old woman. She said the material was special. Special, I screeched. Lily, I'm a girl. Look at me. I grabbed the fabric of the dress, yanking at the neckline. Get it off, get this thing off me now. My fingers fumbled with the delicate material, my new uncoordinated hands struggling to find purchase. Lily, snapping out of her shock, rushed forward. Okay, calm down, she said, her voice shaky but trying to be reassuring. Let's just take it off. It's probably just some weird illusion. She reached behind me, her hands searching for the zipper. I felt her cold fingers against my new, sensitive skin, and I flinched. She found the pull tab and yanked it down. The zipper slid open with a soft hiss, exposing the smooth, pale skin of my back. Okay, pull your arms out, she instructed. I tried, but the dress felt stuck. We pulled and twisted, the silvery fabric clinging to my skin like it was glued on. Finally, with a great heave, we managed to peel it over my head. I threw the shimmering garment onto the floor as if it were a venomous snake. I stood panting in the middle of the bathroom, wearing nothing but my old boxer shorts, which now hung loosely on my newly curved hips. I felt the cool air on my skin, on my bare chest, my new, very female chest. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying that when I opened them, this nightmare would be over. I took a deep breath and opened them. Nothing had changed. I looked down. The soft, round breasts were still there, pale and utterly alien. My waist was still impossibly small, my hips still curved. I ran a hand through my hair. It was still long, cascading over my shoulders. The reflection in the mirror confirmed it. A naked from the waist up girl in men's boxers stared back at me, her expression a perfect mirror of my own horror. The dress was off, but the changes remained. It didn't work, I whispered, my voice a strangled rasp. Lily, it's not coming off. Lily's face was a mess of confusion and fear. Maybe it's the makeup. What makeup? I cried. I'm not wearing any. Your eyelashes look longer. And your lips, they're pinker. She grabbed a makeup remover wipe from the counter and lunged at my face, scrubbing at my cheek. See nothing. It's your skin. A new wave of panic, cold and sharp, washed over me. This was permanent. The thought was so huge, so monstrous. I couldn't fully grasp it. My life, my identity, everything I was gone, replaced by this girl. Try the shower, I said, my mind grasping at straws. Hot water, cold water. Maybe it will wash off. I stumbled into the shower stall, not even bothering to take off my boxers, and cranked the knob. Icy water sprayed over me, and I gasped. The shock of the cold a welcome distraction from the spiraling terror. I stood there, shivering, letting the water plaster my long hair to my back and chest, hoping it would somehow shock my body back to normal. It did nothing. The water just ran over my new curves, over skin that was too soft, too smooth. Lily was pacing back and forth in the bathroom, chewing on her thumbnail. This can't be happening. This is impossible. Magic isn't real. Then what do you call this? I shouted from the shower, gesturing wildly at my own body. Just then, as if to add a final, cruel twist of the knife, Lily's eyes fell on a pair of shoes she'd left on the floor. They were part of the outfit. Silver heels, with thin, elegant straps and impossibly high. Stiletto heels. I brought these to complete the look, she said faintly, picking one up. The sight of them filled me with a fresh surge of rage and despair. Complete the look, Lily. You've ruined my life. I'm stuck like this. I turned off the water and stepped out of the shower, dripping and shivering. Lily handed me a towel, and I wrapped it around myself. It felt strange. Wrapping a towel under my arms to cover my chest was an instinct I didn't know I had. But it felt right. The thought made me feel sick. I was so consumed by my own panic that I almost didn't notice the change in Lily's expression. The fear was still there, but as she looked at me, a shivering, terrified girl wrapped in a towel, another emotion flickered in her eyes. It was a spark of her designer's mind, a flicker of professional curiosity. "Your bone structure," she murmured, almost to herself. "It's actually perfect, very delicate." "Perfect," I choked out. "Lily, this is not the time for a fashion critique." She shook her head, as if waking from a trance. "You're right, I'm sorry. We need to figure this out." "But how? How do you figure out something like this?" There was no instruction manual for magically turning into a girl. There was no one to call. We were alone in this, trapped in a nightmare woven from shimmering, silver fabric. I sank onto the tiled floor. The towel clutched tightly around me, and for the first time since this whole mess started, I felt the hot sting of tears in my eyes. I was Evan. I was a guy. And now I didn't know who or what I was anymore. I don't think I really slept that night. I drifted in and out of a series of bizarre, disjointed nightmares in one. I was trying to play basketball, but my hands were too small to palm the ball, and I kept tripping over my own long hair. In another, I was back in high school, and everyone was pointing and laughing because I was wearing a prom dress to football practice. I woke up with a jolt, my heart pounding, tangled in my sheets. For a blissful, fleeting second, I forgot I was just me, Evan, waking up in my own bed. Then I moved. The first thing I noticed was the weight, a soft, unfamiliar weight on my chest that shifted as I sat up. The second was the cascade of hair that fell over my shoulder and into my face. The nightmare wasn't over. I was still her. I swung my legs out of bed. They were long, slender, and completely hairless. I looked down at my hands, at the graceful fingers and unblemished skin. It was all still real, a wave of despair, so heavy it felt physical, settled over me. I wanted to crawl back under the covers and disappear. I managed to drag myself to the mirror above my dresser. The reflection was devastating. The girl staring back looked exhausted. Her dark hair was a tangled mess. Her eyes were puffy from crying. And the oversized t-shirt I'd borrowed from my own closet to sleep in had slipped off one shoulder, revealing a delicate collarbone. I looked vulnerable, fragile. I looked like everything I had never been. A soft knock came at the door, and Lily poked her head in. Her face was etched with guilt and worry. She was holding a tray with a glass of orange juice and some toast. In her other hand, she held a brush and a small, formidable-looking bag. "How are you feeling?" she asked quietly. "How do you think I'm feeling?" I croaked, my voice still a morning raspy but distinctly female sound. "I feel like I'm in someone else's body." She came in and set the tray on my desk. "I know, I'm so sorry, Evan. I didn't sleep at all. I was online all night, looking for anything folklore, mythology, weird fabric shops, anything that could explain this. I found nothing." "So I'm stuck like this forever," I said flatly. It wasn't a question. Lily bit her lip, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I don't know, but look, we can't just hide in here. Mom and Dad will be home later this afternoon. We have to have a plan. You have to look presentable." She gestured with the bag she was holding. It was her makeup bag. "No," I said, backing away. "No way. I'm not doing this. I'm not playing dress-up in my own life." "It's not dress-up, Evan," she insisted, her voice gaining a sense of urgent practicality. "It's survival. You can't walk around looking like this. People will stare. They'll ask questions. If we can't reverse it, then for now, you have to learn how to live with it, and that means learning how to be her." Her words hit me like a splash of cold water. She was right. As much as I hated it, hiding wasn't an option. My parents would be home. I had classes on Monday. My whole life was out there, waiting for an Evan who no longer existed. I sank onto the edge of my bed, my head in my hands. I don't know how. "I'll teach you," she said softly, sitting next to me. "We'll start small. First, let's tackle that hair." She held up the brush, reluctantly. I turned my back to her. She began to gently work through the tangles, starting from the ends and moving up. The sensation of the bristles on my scalp was strange. The pull of the brush on the long strands a constant reminder of how different I was. "You have to be gentle with long hair," she explained, her voice a calm murmur. "It breaks easily, and you'll need conditioner, a lot of it." It was the most surreal conversation I'd ever had. My sister was giving me hair care tips while I was still reeling from a complete biological transformation. After the hair was tamed, she pulled out a small, lacy garment from a bag of clothes she'd brought from her room. It was a bra, a simple beige, training-style bra. My stomach churned with a mixture of shame and morbid curiosity. "You'll need this," she said, her tone matter-of-fact, avoiding my eyes, "for support and so things don't show through your shirt." My face burned with humiliation. I took it from her, the delicate fabric feeling obscene in my hands. How does this even work? She showed me how to put it on, how to fasten the tiny hooks in the back. The process was clumsy and mortifying. The feeling of the straps digging into my new, softer shoulders and the band constricting around my chest was incredibly alien. It felt like a cage, a constant, physical reminder of the feminine form I was trapped in. It was both deeply embarrassing and, in a way I couldn't understand, felt necessary. The light support was almost comforting against the tender ache in my chest. Next came the clothes. She'd brought a simple pair of her jeans and a soft, gray sweater. Her jeans were a nightmare. I couldn't get them past my hips. We had to struggle and wiggle until I was finally zipped in. They were tight, hugging curves I wasn't used to having. I felt constricted, packaged. The sweater was easier, but it draped over my chest in a way that made my new figure undeniable. The final challenge was walking. My balance was still off. My hips seemed to sway with a mind of their own, and my steps felt lighter, less grounded. Lily made me walk back and forth across my room. "You're walking like a guy," she criticized gently. "Your footsteps are too heavy, and your shoulders are too stiff. Try to relax. Let your hips move a little." "I don't want my hips to move," I snapped, stumbling as I tried to adjust my gait. This was my first day in a new life, and it was a series of small, intimate humiliations. Learning to brush hair that wasn't mine. Learning to wear underwear that felt like a costume. Learning to walk in a body that refused to obey my old commands. Every single action, from pulling on a sweater to walking across a room, was a battle against a lifetime of muscle memory. Lily stood back, observing me with a critical eye. I stood in the middle of my room, wearing her clothes, my long hair falling over my shoulders. I felt like an imposter, a fraud. But as I caught my reflection in the dark screen of my computer monitor, I had to admit she had a point. I didn't look like Evan anymore. I looked like a girl, a very tired, very unhappy girl, but a girl nonetheless. And for now, that was the only identity I had. By midday, Lily declared that staying cooped up in my room was making things worse. Her logic was terrifyingly sound the longer I hid, the harder it would be to ever face the world. "We need clothes that actually fit you," she stated, her pragmatic designer mode fully engaged. "My stuff is too small in the hips and too short, and you can't live in your old t-shirts. We have to go shopping." "Shopping?" I squeaked, my new voice rising in alarm. "Out there with people?" "Yes, with people," she said, pulling a pair of sunglasses and a baseball cap from her own collection. "We'll be discreet. It's a big mall. No one will know you." My heart hammered against my ribs. The thought of stepping outside, of being seen by strangers, was paralyzing. In my room, I was just me in a weird situation. Out there, I would be a girl. I would be judged and perceived as a girl. There was no hiding. But Lily was relentless. She convinced me that it was a necessary evil. like ripping off a Band-Aid. She put the sunglasses on my face and tucked my long hair into the baseball cap. "There," she said, assessing her work. "You just look like a cute, casual girl trying to be incognito. No one will look twice." I wasn't so sure. Every nerve in my body was screaming in protest as we walked out the front door. The sunlight felt brighter, the air sharper. The world seemed different. Or maybe I was the one who was different. My senses felt heightened. I was acutely aware of the slight sway of my hips as I walked, the way the denim of the tight jeans rubbed against my legs, the soft weight of my chest moving under my sweater. Walking to her car was an ordeal. I was so focused on trying to walk normally that I nearly tripped on the curb. Every distant car horn, every chirping bird, sounded like a prelude to discovery. The mall was an assault on the senses. The noise, the lights, the crowds of people, it was overwhelming. I instinctively hunched my shoulders, trying to make myself smaller, and stuck close to Lily's side like a frightened child. I kept my head down, my gaze fixed on the floor, convinced that every single person was staring at me, that they could somehow see through my disguise and spot the terrified guy hiding inside. But they weren't. A few people glanced our way, but their eyes slid right past me. I was just another girl at the mall with her sister or friend. The anonymity was both a relief and profoundly unsettling. I was invisible, but the me who was invisible wasn't the real me. Lily led me into a large department store, straight to the women's section. The sheer volume of clothing was staggering. Racks upon racks of dresses, blouses, skirts. It was a foreign country. "Okay," Lily said, pulling out a few items. "We need basics, jeans, sweaters, t-shirts, and underwear." My face flushed a deep, mortifying red at the last word. The idea of buying lingerie in a public place was a new circle of hell. She must have seen the panic in my eyes because she softened. "I'll grab the underwear. You just find some jeans and tops that you think you might tolerate." I wandered numbly through the aisles, pulling a few plain items off the racks. Everything felt strange. The fabrics were softer, the cuts more delicate. I had no idea what my size was. Lily had to come over and help me, holding a pair of jeans up to my new hips and squinting. "You're probably a size 8, she declared. It was a meaningless number to me. Another piece of a foreign language I now had to speak. In the fitting room, the nightmare continued, trying on clothes in the cramped stall, under the harsh fluorescent lights. I was forced to confront my new body again and again. The way a shirt hugged my chest, the way a pair of jeans emphasized the curve of my hips, it was a constant, stark reminder of my new reality. After we finally found a few items that fit, we headed for the checkout. I stood awkwardly behind Lily, trying to will myself to become invisible. As we waited, I felt a presence beside me. "Excuse me," a man's voice said. I tensed, my blood running cold. I was sure I'd been found out. I slowly turned my head. A young guy, maybe a year or two older than me, was standing there, smiling. He was holding a shirt. "You dropped this," he said, holding out a gray t-shirt that must have fallen off my armful of clothes. "Oh," I mumbled, my voice barely a whisper. I took it from him, my fingers brushing against his. A tiny jolt, like static electricity, shot up my arm. "Thanks." "No problem," he said, his smile widening. He had nice eyes. "That's a nice color on you. The sweater you're wearing, I mean." My brain short-circuited. Was he flirting with me? I could feel a hot blush creeping up my neck and spreading across my cheeks. I looked away, suddenly fascinated by a display of scarves. "Thanks," I stammered, unable to form a coherent sentence. "You have a good day," he said, before moving to another checkout line. Lily paid for the clothes, and we walked away. As soon as we were out of earshot, she nudged me with her elbow. "See, that wasn't so bad. You even got hit on." "I did not get hit on," I muttered, my face still burning. He was just being polite. But was he, the way he had looked at me, the warmth in his smile? It was the kind of look I, as a guy, might have given a pretty girl. To be on the receiving end of it was disorienting. It was flattering and terrifying all at once. My inner conflict was a raging storm. A part of me, the old Evan, was screaming in protest, disgusted and ashamed. That was a guy. You're a guy. Why is your heart beating so fast? But another, quieter part of me, a part I didn't recognize, was flustered, pleased even. The compliment had landed somewhere deep inside me and sparked a tiny, unfamiliar flutter. As we were leaving the mall, a man walking in front of us reached the door first. He glanced back, saw us, and held the heavy glass door open, waiting for us to pass through. "Thank you," Ties and Lily said, walking through. I followed, mumbling a thanks of my own. He smiled at me and said, "You're welcome, ladies." Ladies. The word hit me with the force of a physical blow. He wasn't just being polite. He was stating a fact. He saw two young women. It was another small moment, another casual, everyday interaction. But it solidified the truth of my situation more than anything else had. To the rest of the world, I was no longer Evan. I was one of the ladies, and the most terrifying part was, for a split second, the flutter in my chest felt less like fear and more like something else entirely, something I didn't dare put a name to. The days that followed the disastrous shopping trip blurred into a strange and intensive boot camp of femininity, with Lily as my reluctant drill sergeant. Our parents' return had been a close call. We'd managed to hide my transformation by claiming I had a terrible flu and was quarantining in my room. It was a flimsy excuse that wouldn't last long, which only added to the urgency of Lily's lessons. "If you're going to be a girl, you can't be a slob," she'd announced one morning, marching into my room with her arms full of lotions, shampoos, and what looked like an arsenal of makeup brushes. My education began with skincare. I, who had previously considered soap and water the pinnacle of hygiene, was now being instructed on the sacred rites of cleansing, toning, and moisturizing, the feeling of the cool, scented creams on my new, softer face was strange, but not entirely unpleasant. It was an act of self-care I'd never considered, an intimacy with my own reflection that felt both foreign and oddly soothing. Then came the makeup. This was the part I dreaded most. It felt like the ultimate betrayal of my old self, like painting a mask onto a stranger's face. Lily sat me down in front of her vanity mirror, the surface surrounded by bright, unforgiving bulbs. "Okay, look up," she commanded, holding a mascara wand like a surgical instrument. I flinched as the brush neared my eye. "I can't." "Don't be a baby," she sighed, her patience already wearing thin. "It's just mascara. It'll make your eyes pop." Reluctantly, I did as she said. She was meticulous, her touch surprisingly gentle as she applied a light foundation to even out my skin tone, a soft blush to my cheeks, and a hint of color to my lips. Each step was a new sensory experience. The cool, damp feel of the foundation sponge, the feather-light whisk of the blush brush against my cheekbones, the smooth, waxy glide of the lip balm. When she was done, she turned me back to the mirror. There, natural, nothing too dramatic. I stared at my reflection. It was me, but polished. The makeup didn't look like a mask. It looked like an enhancement. It softened the lingering traces of Evan in my features and highlighted the delicate, feminine structure that now defined my face. My eyes looked bigger, my skin flawless, my lips fuller. The girl in the mirror was no longer just a terrified imposter. She was starting to look like she belonged in her own skin. I hated that I didn't hate it. The physical lessons were even harder. Lily taught me how to sit properly, knees together. Evan, how to stand without slouching, how to get out of a car without being clumsy. We practiced walking in my room, first in flats, then in a pair of low heels she'd bought for me. The heels were a nightmare. They forced me to walk on the balls of my feet, shortened my stride, and made my hips sway whether I wanted them to or not. It felt unnatural, performative. "You have to get used to it," Lily said, circling me like a hawk. "It changes your posture, makes you look more confident." My voice was another project. While the dress had pitched it higher, my speech patterns were still all Evan. I spoke in flat, declarative sentences. Lily made me practice adding inflection, softening the ends of my words, and even taught me how to laugh without it sounding like a bark. "It's all a performance, isn't it?" I asked her one evening, exhausted after an hour of trying to master a graceful laugh. She paused, looking at me with a thoughtful expression. "Maybe at first, for everyone, but then you do it for so long, it just becomes you." Her words stuck with me. Was this performance destined to become my reality? The thought was still terrifying, but a small treacherous part of me was beginning to wonder if it would be so bad. The outside world continued to be a source of constant, low-grade anxiety and unexpected validation. When we had to make a trip to the grocery store, I found myself instinctively reaching for things on the top shelf for a shorter, older woman who couldn't reach. She smiled at me, a warm, genuine smile, and said, "Thank you, dear. It's so nice to see a young lady who is also so tall and helpful." Young lady, the word sent that familiar, confusing jolt through me. It was a mix of shame she was seeing a lie and a secret. Warm glow of pride. I had passed the test. I was convincing. At a coffee shop, the barista called out my order. "Latte for, He'd forgotten my name. I opened my mouth to say Evan, but stopped myself just in time. Lily, quick on her feet, had given the barista her name. But, for a moment, I was nameless, not Evan, and not yet anyone else. The barista, a guy around my age, just smiled and said, "Here you go, beautiful, have a great day." I took the cup, my cheeks flushing. That word, beautiful. I had never been called beautiful in my life. I'd been called dude, bro, man, to be seen, to be acknowledged. In this new, aesthetically pleasing way was a powerful and addictive drug. The old Evan had been an average-looking guy, blending into the background. This new person, this girl, she was noticeable. People smiled at her. They held doors for her. They called her beautiful. In the quiet of my room at night, the conflict raged within me. I would look at my reflection, no longer with horror, but with a deep, unsettling confusion. I missed the ease of my old life, the simplicity of being a guy, but I couldn't deny the strange, alluring pull of this new existence. The shame of what had happened was still there, a constant, dull ache in my chest, but now it was mingled with a growing, secret pleasure. I was starting to enjoy the attention. I was starting to get good at the performance, and the line between Evan and the girl in the mirror was getting blurrier every single day. The flimsy excuse of my flu was about to expire. My parents were getting suspicious, and the pressure was mounting. It was in this climate of escalating panic that Lily came up with her most insane idea yet. "There's a party tonight," she announced, bursting into my room. "At Sarah's place. It's just a casual college thing, and we're going." I stared at her as if she just suggested we go bungee jumping without a cord. "A party? Are you out of your mind? A party with people we know. People who know me. That's the point," she said, her eyes gleaming with a manic logic I was beginning to recognize. "This is the final exam, the ultimate test. If you can survive a party for a couple of hours without anyone recognizing you, you can survive anything. We can build a whole new identity for you. We can say you're our cousin from out of town, visiting for the semester. Eva. How do you like the name Eva?" Eva. It was so close to Evan. A simple, elegant twist. It felt like both a tribute and a mockery. The idea was terrifying, but a part of me, the part that had been practicing this new role in the mirror, was undeniably intrigued. The fear was a cold knot in my stomach, but underneath it, a tiny spark of adrenaline ignited. Could I actually pull it off? "What about my voice?" I asked. My own voice a nervous squeak. "Someone will recognize my voice." "No, they won't," she said confidently. "It's completely different now, and at a loud party, no one will notice. Trust me, we just have to complete the look." And so began the most intense transformation yet. Lily went through my new meager wardrobe and selected a pair of dark, slim-fitting jeans that made my legs look a mile long, a silky black camisole, and a soft, charcoal gray cardigan. It was a simple, elegant outfit that was somehow more intimidatingly feminine than anything I'd worn yet. Then came the hair and makeup. She spent over an hour working on me. She curled my long hair into soft, cascading waves. The makeup was more dramatic this time, a smoky eye that made my dark eyes seem deep and mysterious, and a shade of lipstick that was a bold, dusky rose. When I looked in the mirror, I felt a genuine shock. The person looking back wasn't Evan playing dress-up. It wasn't even the scared, awkward girl from the mall. This was someone new. This was Ava. She was polished, confident, and unnervingly beautiful. For the first time, I looked at my reflection and didn't see a trace of the boy I used to be. The realization was both liberating and profoundly sad. As we drove to the party, my hands were clammy, and my heart was doing a frantic drum solo against my ribs. I can't do this, Lily. What if someone talks to me? Then you talk back, she said calmly. Just be quiet and mysterious. Guys love that. The party was already in full swing when we arrived. Music pulsed from inside the house, and people spilled out onto the lawn. My social anxiety, now magnified 1,000 times, kicked in. I wanted to turn and run. Lily grabbed my hand, her grip firm. Deep breaths. You are Ava. You're my cousin from Portland. You're visiting for a few weeks. Got it. I nodded, my throat too dry to speak. We walked in. The house was crowded and loud. I immediately felt 100 pairs of eyes on me, though it was probably just my paranoia. I followed Lily like a shadow as she navigated the sea of people, grabbing 2 plastic cups of punch along the way. We found a relatively quiet corner, and I clutched my cup like a life raft. I scanned the room, my eyes wide with terror, searching for familiar faces, and then I saw him. My blood turned to ice. Standing by the sound system, laughing with a group of friends, was Alex, my best friend. We'd known each other since we were 6 years old. We played on the same soccer team, had the same taste in terrible movies, and spent countless hours in my room, gaming. He knew me better than anyone. If anyone could see through this disguise, it was him. I tried to shrink into the wall, hoping the shadows would swallow me whole. Lily, I hissed, Alex is here. We have to go, now. Don't panic, she whispered back. He won't recognize you. You look nothing like Evan. But it was too late. Alex turned, his gaze sweeping across the room. For a horrifying second, his eyes met mine. I froze, expecting a flash of recognition, a confused frown. Instead, his eyes widened slightly. A slow smile spread across his face. He said something to his friends and then started walking toward us. Toward me. My mind went blank with sheer terror. This was it. Game over. He was going to walk up, look at me closely, and say, Evan, what the hell? He stopped in front of me, his smile confident and charming. Hey, he said, his voice friendly. I don't think we've met. I'm Alex. He was looking directly at me, at Eva, and he had no idea. The relief was so immense I felt dizzy, but it was immediately replaced by a new, more complicated brand of panic. Hi, I managed to say, my voice a breathy whisper. I couldn't believe it was my voice. This is my cousin, Eva. Lily jumped in smoothly, saving me. She's visiting from out of town. Eva, Alex repeated, the name rolling off his tongue easily. He had a great smile. I'd never noticed that before. It's really nice to meet you, so what do you think of our boring little town? He was talking to me. My best friend was hitting on me. The absurdity of the situation was staggering. My brain was screaming. Run, tell him the truth, do something. But my body was paralyzed. It's nice, I said, my voice barely audible over the music. She's a little shy, Lily added with a wink. I can see that, Alex said, his gaze never leaving my face. He wasn't looking at me the way he looked at Evan. He was looking at me with an open, appreciative interest that made my skin tingle and my stomach do a nervous flip. So, Eva from Portland, can I get you a fresh drink? This punch is basically just sugar. I shook my head, clutching my cup tighter. I'm okay, thanks. "All right," he said, not deterred. "Well, if you get tired of hiding in the corner with your protective cousin, come find me. I'll show you how we party around here." He gave me one last charming smile and a little wave before rejoining his friends. I stood there, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. I had done it. I had faced my best friend. And he hadn't seen Evan. He had only seen a shy, pretty girl named Eva. The rest of the night was a blur. A few other guys tried to talk to me, but I deflected them with one-word answers, letting Lily do most of the talking. My attention kept drifting back to Alex. I watched him from across the room, watched him laugh and joke with his friends, our friends. It was like watching my old life through a one-way mirror. I was there, but I wasn't. Later, as we were leaving, we passed him in the hallway. "Leaving so soon?" Even he asked, his voice warm. I just nodded, unable to meet his eyes. "Well, it was really great meeting you," he said. "I hope I see you around before you head back to Portland." As I walked past him, his hand brushed against my arm. The touch was light, accidental, but it sent a shockwave through my entire system. It was a simple, meaningless gesture, but from him, to this new me, it felt charged with a strange and terrifying electricity. In the car on the way home, I was silent. I had passed the test. I had survived, but I didn't feel triumphant. I felt hollowed out, confused, and utterly, completely alone. The night had been a success, but it had also been a profound turning point. Eva had been born, but I was starting to fear that in the process. Evan was beginning to die. The weeks following the party were a strange new kind of normal. My cousin Eva identity was my shield. With Lily's help, I had a backstory, a reason for being. We told our parents Eva would be staying with us for the semester to find herself, after dropping out of college in Portland. They bought it, welcoming this quiet, shy niece they never knew they had into their home. They were kind. But their polite distance was a constant reminder that they were interacting with a stranger, not their son. I started to live a dual life, even within my own skin. Online, I was still Evan, talking to Alex and my other friends through game chats, my voice disguised by the headset's microphone. They'd ask where I'd been, and I'd make up excuses about being busy with a new project. Alex once mentioned the party. "Dude, you missed it," he'd said over the headset. "Lily's cousin was there. Ava, she's, wow, seriously stunning. A little shy, though." Hearing him talk about me about Ava with such open admiration sent a confusing tremor through me. It was a secret, guilty pleasure, like eavesdropping on a conversation I was never meant to hear. But in the real world, I was Ava. I went with Lily to her classes sometimes, sitting in the back of a lecture hall, just to be out of the house. I got used to the weight of my long hair on my back, the feel of a purse strap on my shoulder, the way men's eyes would follow me when I walked down the street. The initial terror of public life had faded, replaced by a cautious, tentative adaptation. I was learning Eva's language. I learned that a smile could deflect unwanted attention or invite a conversation. I learned that tilting my head when I listened made people feel heard. I learned the subtle power that came with this new form of power I had never known as a guy. It was a soft power, one of influence and attraction, and it was as intoxicating as it was frightening. One rainy Tuesday afternoon, I was home alone. The house was quiet, the only sound the rhythmic drumming of rain against the window panes. I found myself standing in front of the full-length mirror on the back of my bedroom door, a place I had avoided for weeks. For a long time, I just looked. The girl in the mirror was no longer a complete stranger. I recognized the worry in her dark eyes, the way her lips curved down slightly at the corners when she was thinking. She was wearing a simple pair of gray sweatpants, my first purchase of girl clothes, that were purely for comfort, and a soft, fitted long-sleeve shirt. Her hair was down, falling in loose waves around her shoulders. She looked normal, like a real person. Slowly, hesitantly, I raised a hand and touched the reflection's cheek. The glass was cool, but in my mind, I could feel the soft skin beneath. This was my face now, The high cheekbones, the delicate jawline. I traced the line of my eyebrow, the curve of my lips. There was no revulsion anymore, no panicked denial. There was only a quiet, profound sense of wonder. My hand drifted lower, to my collarbone, which was more defined than it had ever been. I let my fingers trail down the center of my chest, stopping just above the gentle swell of my breasts. My breath hitched. This was the part of my new body that had always felt the most alien, the most symbolic of the identity I had lost. But today, something was different. I pressed my palm flat against my chest, over my heart. I could feel its steady beat beneath the soft tissue. This was my heart. This was my body. It was alive, and it was mine. I moved my hands to my waist, feeling the narrowness there, the way it gracefully flared out into the curve of my hips. I had spent weeks fighting this shape, trying to hide it, trying to stand in ways that would minimize it. Now, I just let my hands rest there, accepting the contour. This was the shape of me. My old life as Evan felt like a distant dream, a story about someone else. I remembered the feeling of my old, broader shoulders, the scratch of stubble on my chin, the deep rumble of my old voice. Those memories were tinged with a strange nostalgia, a sadness for a person who was gone, but they no longer felt like me. Was this a betrayal? Was I giving up on Evan? The thought sent a pang of guilt through me. But what was I supposed to be fighting for? A body that no longer existed, an identity that the world no longer recognized. The girl in the mirror looked sad. I saw the conflict in her eyes, the loneliness. She had been born from a magical accident, a cosmic joke. She was navigating a world she wasn't prepared for, carrying the ghost of a boy inside her. And in that moment, I felt an overwhelming wave of empathy for her, for myself. "It's okay," I whispered, the words fogging the glass. My voice was soft, feminine, and for the first time, it sounded like my own. I wasn't Evan trapped in a girl's body anymore. I was a girl who used to be a boy named Evan. The distinction was subtle, but it was everything. One was a prison. The other was a story, a beginning. A single tear traced a path down my cheek. I watched its twins slide down the cheek of the girl in the mirror. They weren't tears of horror or despair, not anymore. They were tears of acceptance, of grief for the person I had lost, and of a strange, burgeoning hope for the person I was becoming. I stood there for a long time, just looking, just breathing. The rain continued to fall outside, washing the world clean, and in the quiet of my room, in front of that mirror, I felt like something was being washed clean inside of me too. The war between Evan and Eva was over, and what was left was simply me. A few days later, Lily found me sitting by the window in the living room, watching the autumn leaves drift down from the trees. I had a book open on my lap, but I hadn't turned a page in an hour. I was just thinking. She sat down on the armchair opposite me, a quiet understanding in her eyes. We didn't talk as much about the problem anymore. The frantic search for a cure had long since been abandoned, replaced by a silent, shared reality. She had been my guide, my mentor, and in many ways, my creator. Our relationship had shifted from typical siblings to something deeper, more complex. "What's on your mind?" she asked gently. I looked up from the window, meeting her gaze. "I was just thinking about that first day," I said, my voice soft. The panic, the feeling that my life was over. Lily winced, a familiar expression of guilt crossing her face. "Ava, I'm still so sorry." "No," I interrupted, shaking my head. "Don't be. It's not your fault. It was destiny, or a weird old magic shop lady or whatever. But it happened. What I was thinking was, I was wrong." "Wrong about what?" "That my life was over," I said, a small, genuine smile touching my lips. It felt natural, unforced. It wasn't over, it was just my rebooted. Lily returned the smile. a look of immense relief washing over her. "So, you're okay? Really okay?" "I don't know if okay is the right word," I admitted, choosing my words carefully. "It's not that simple. I still miss parts of my old life, the ease of it, my friends. I miss being uncomplicated. But this..." I gestured down at myself. At the body I was finally starting to call my own. "This isn't a prison anymore. It's just me. A different me." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the unspoken questions about the future hanging in the air. What would I do? Could Eva go to college, get a job? Fall in love? The path ahead was a complete unknown, a map that had to be drawn from scratch. It was a terrifying prospect, but it was no longer a hopeless one. "You know," Lily said, her voice thoughtful, "that dress, I was so proud of it. I thought it was the best thing I'd ever made. I had no idea." I looked down at my hands, which were resting in my lap. They were Eva's hands, slender, graceful. I could still remember how they used to look broader, calloused from work and sports. But these hands felt right. They felt like mine. The future was a terrifying, beautiful blank page. Maybe I'd go back to college. Maybe I'd study something new, something Eva would be interested in. Maybe I'd have to face Alex one day and tell him the truth. A thought that still sent a jolt of fear and something else, something warm and fluttery through me. Maybe my life would be filled with challenges and heartbreaks I couldn't even imagine yet. But for the first time since that fateful afternoon in Lily's room, I felt a sense of peace. The constant internal battle had ceased. The panic had subsided. What remained was a quiet acceptance, and beneath that, a flicker of excitement. I had a second chance at life, a chance to define myself on my own terms, free from the expectations and habits of the boy I once was. I looked back at Lily, my sister, my accomplice, my friend. She was watching me, her expression full of love and a little bit of awe. In that moment, I knew I wouldn't have to face that blank page alone. I finally laughed, a real genuine laugh. It was lighter than my old one, clearer. It was Eva's laugh, and it was beautiful. "I used to think that dress had stolen my life," I said, my voice clear and steady as I looked out at the falling leaves, at the world waiting for me, that it took Evan away and left this stranger in his place. I paused, letting the truth of my next words settle in my own heart before I spoke them aloud. But maybe it didn't steal anything. Maybe it just returned a part of me I never knew was missing. Maybe it just gave me back my true self.